Welcome to a new video in my home automation series, and today I want to talk about the Zigbee2mqtt, and this is a software package which would allow you to build your own Zigbee gateway and convert all your Zigbee messages into MQTT. So you can use it either in Home Assistant or any other home automation product that supports MQTT. And of course I'm going to use Node-RED, but I think in this video I'm just going to talk about how I created this whole how I set up my Zigbee network. I'm still in the beginning of this, so I'm just going to talk about the basics, and I might just refer to other videos that I also watched on, a little bit more about Zigbee stuff. But I do refer to this Zigbee2mqtt in some of my previous video, so I wanted to cover the whole topic. So if you want to build your own, then well, you can follow my video and you can see how I did that and where I am at the moment. So as I said, this is a software package, but of course, because we are connecting to a physical network, we also need some sort of physical hardware as well. And there are a lot of different options that you can do. Some people take the Sonoff Zigbee gateway and they reflash the firmware, but what I decided to do is purchase the Sonoff Zigbee dongle, the Sonoff Zigbee 3.0 USB dongle Plus. I mean, I knew that I'm going to connect it to my server anyway, and I'm using my Zigbee gateway, the Sonoff Zigbee gateway for some demos as well, so I didn't want to reflash that. And to be honest, I mean, we can check the price, but this is not really expensive. And probably the other good thing the other reason to buy this, because this uses a newer version of the Zigbee chip, which apparently it's more powerful, it is able to handle more devices, so it is definitely a good base for you to start your Zigbee network. And by the way, I'm going to refer to this as a Zigbee coordinator. So that's the central, that's the hub, that's the gateway your Zigbee network is going to use. As you can see, many people just use it to plug it into the Raspberry Pi, and this uses this new TI chip, which is better than the old one, so that's definitely good. And when you buy this Zigbee USB dongle, you get what you see here on the picture. So you get this thing, the dongle itself, which is comes in a metal case, so you can dissipate heat, and you also get this antenna with it. And when you order it, I purchased this from IT website, but it's available on Amazon and a lot of other places as well. I'm pretty sure you can get it on AliExpress or eBay as well. So you can buy the USB dongle, and as you can see, it's $14.99 at the moment. And there is also they are also selling a 1.5 meter USB cable, extension cable, which I also purchased. And this is highly recommended if you are using it with a Raspberry Pi, or as a matter of fact, any device which uses Wi-Fi, because Zigbee uses the same 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth as Wi-Fi. So if you use the USB extension cable, you can separate this device from the the Wi-Fi transmitter, which is in the Raspberry Pi, and that is going to give the the USB dongle a better chance to fight against your Wi-Fi radio, which is in the computer. So I definitely bought that cable so I could separate it from my server, just create a little bit of distance between the two. And when you are here, you can also purchase the some of the Sonoff Zigbee devices, which I do have, and I also have a lot of other Zigbee devices as well. So as I said, it's not really expensive. It's definitely not more expensive than buying a Zigbee hub and trying to reflash that. And here you can buy something that you can just plug in. It's already flashed with the Z-Stack coordinator firmware. So literally you don't have to do anything. You just unpack it and unplug it, and you can do the installation straight away. And since we are talking about installation, I have created an installation guide. Well, as a matter of fact, I've extended my Node-RED server document, and the latest section here is the Zigbee2mqtt section. And here I'm going to talk about the Zigbee-mqtt installation, but before that, I learned this very nice trick about how you can identify devices. normally if you plug in any USB device, at some point you have to specify what is the device, I think it's the device ID. So that would be something like /dev/tty0 for the first USB device and tty1 for the second USB device. And I ran into the same issue with my Raspberry Pi, that sometimes I had like 2 USB devices connected, and sometimes if I restart the Raspberry Pi, they switch numbers. And it was really annoying because things wouldn't work anymore. But what I learned is that you can issue this command in the command line, which is going to give you all your serial or your USB devices by their long ID. So you can use this long ID in order to reference them in the setup. So this is what I'm going to use for the Zigbee2mqtt configuration as well. So again, you bought your Zigbee gateway, the Zigbee coordinator, you unpack it, you plug it into the device with or without the extension cord. And then you start configuring the Zigbee2mqtt. And I have a link to the instruction here. And I mean, it takes a few steps. It is not as simple as ATP get install, but again, it's not that complicated either. So as you can see, this is how you install it, and then you check your npm version, and then you clone the repository. You create a subdirectory or a new folder. You go into that folder, you install it, and you do some additional stuff. So you do these few steps here, and then you create you edit your Zigbee2mqtt configuration YAML file. So you issue this command from your command line, and then you will see that a basic configuration would be deployed for you, where it has a section for MQTT, and it also has a section where you can configure your device. And if you go back to my document, you can see that this is how the beginning of my configuration file looks like. There is also, I think there is also an advanced section which I haven't copied, so just leave whatever you have in your file. So I'm not using Home Assistant, so I put Home Assistant as false. There is the next statement is permit_join, and if you set it to true, that means that any device will be able to connect to your Zigbee network immediately, even without you allowing the join first. So I set it to false. And then you have an MQTT section, so you define your base topic, your server details, your user ID and a password. So this is your MQTT server details here. And then next you have to specify a serial port. So this is your dongle device ID. And as I said, for me, that was the ID of my Sonoff Zigbee dongle. As you can see, the whole, the name of the device is in the ID, so it is really easy to find it. So you just say /dev/serial/by_ID/ and whatever you have gotten on the screen. And then the last bit that I definitely want you to include, and it wasn't mentioned in the documentation, is these two lines. So front end and port, and well, you just pick a port. I think the default port is 8086, but that happens to be the port of InfluxDB as well. So I change it to 8085. And once you do that, you save the configuration YAML, and then you can, you add this advanced network key generate, you exit, and then you do these commands and you start your Zigbee2mqtt network. And you should be able to see these logs. And you also have a couple of instructions here how you can configure this to run as a service. So you create a new service entry, and you add the following, and you have some comments how you start the service, and also how, if the service is running, you're going to see these details. And finally, you add this command in order to allow the system to automatically start this service when your server starts. So that's the last command. And with this, you should be done, and your Zigbee2mqtt network should be running. And by the way, there are some good tips here how you can, stop, start, or restart your service, or you look at the service logs. But hopefully, you are not going to need that. Once you have done this, you have a new Zigbee2mqtt network, but that network actually also has a front end, and this is why we added that 2 lines with a front end. So if you've seen on the beginning of the video my home or dashboard, I've also added this button for the Zigbee2mqtt, which you can see here, and this is what I was showing in the beginning of the video. So here you can push this button to permit other devices to join. So before you power on your new Zigbee device, or before you reset them to get them into pairing mode, you click on this permit join all, and that's going to enable joining for, I think, 250 seconds. And in that period, any device which is in range would be able to connect to your network. And as you can see, I have a bunch of devices already connected. Some of these I've reviewed a long time ago. So for example, you can see all my Sonoff and Blitzwolf sensors and smart plugs, and I think I've received this temperature sensor from Vetten, which is here. I've also received this relay board from Vetten, and just recently I reviewed this Zigbee knob or Zigbee dial that I purchased recently, and they would all appear with these ID, and I've started renaming some of these to, you know, human readable names. So you can just click here and then just, you know, give them a friendly name. And this is important because once they start sending messages to the MQTT network, they would be referred to the same name that you have configured here. So you see Vetten-2ch and the knob, and you can see the messages from them. And if we just wait for a little bit, then we will see some messages from some of these others, and they will appear with these codes. So what you can see here in the in this dashboard, well, first of all, you can click on any of these devices, and you can see the manufacturer and some other details. What is really important for me is the exposes. So this is what you see, how they are sending messages to you. So for example, if I go back to the devices, and if I go back to my plug, and if I go exposes, as you can see that I can turn this plug on and off, but it also reports power consumption. So what is the watts, the amperes, the amps that the device draws that is connected to it, and it also calculates the kilowatt hours and, you know, some other details. So this is good for me just to, you know, look at these devices. You can also switch to this dashboard and you can see them in a tile layout as well. The other thing that I would draw your attention to is the map. And why does it look funny like this? Maybe I do that. Because one really important thing about the Zigbee network is the Zigbee network is a mesh network, which means that you always have a coordinator. So this is your USB dongle, or well, in my case, the Sonoff Zigbee USB dongle, and that's always the, you know, the center of your Zigbee network. And then you have what is called the, you know, these blue things, which are the routers. And router is anything which is connected to mains power. So these are the things that are not battery operated, but they are always connected to mains power. And the important thing about the routers is that the router, as the name suggests, can route messages from other devices. So for example, I have a motion sensor here. So that motion sensor is too far away from my coordinator. So he usually talks to this guy, and this guy is going to route the messages over to my coordinator. So this is how the message from the motion sensor is actually going to reach my coordinator. But here, for example, this switch is close enough to the coordinator, so it can talk directly to the coordinator. The important thing, or the important takeaway from this one, is you can build out a very wide Zigbee network with using routers in order to spread the coverage of the coordinator. And that also means that I don't really know whether it is expected to work, but when you are setting up your Zigbee network, you should be, well, first you place your coordinator, you bring that online, and then you start pairing your routers to the coordinator, and preferably pair your routers in the same place where you're going to use them. And of course, start pairing them. Well, first start pairing the ones that are closest to the coordinator, and then you start moving outwards. So that would give the all your devices a chance to, in order to discover the Zigbee network as the the final network is going to look like. And normally with Wi-Fi devices, we usually say that, try to pair your Wi-Fi device close to the router where it has the most reception. But I think for Zigbee, it's better to do it the way they are finally going to be deployed, because then initially they will start to set up the correct topology of the Zigbee network. I was told that if you have a device which talks to the coordinator directly, but then you add a router to that room where this device is, in time it would learn that for him it's better to talk to the router first, because obviously it takes less energy for him to talk to a closer device than to talk to the coordinator as well. Maybe I haven't waited long enough, but in my experience it wasn't happening. So for example, I purchased this motion sensor first and it was talking to the coordinator directly, and I purchased this socket or smart socket, and this guy was still talking to the coordinator. So what I had to do is I had to basically disconnect it from the Zigbee network. So I had to delete it. So you can do this in devices, you can delete them. And when I repaired it, then it started talking to the smart plug first and not to the coordinator directly. So probably I have to do the same for some of the other devices. So this is just like, like a trick how you build your Zigbee network. But that also means that, ideally you have to spend everything up front and start setting up your Zigbee network, starting with your routers, starting close to the coordinator and spreading out. But I think what is going to happen in most cases is that you start buying devices and you end up buying more routers, and I think in time these devices would just learn to take a different path in order to reach the coordinator. Maybe it's going to take weeks or even months, I don't know. I probably just waited a couple of days, and I was assuming that within a few days they would start reusing the network in a different way. But this is how they are using at the moment. But at least you can just validate that you have proper signal between each of your devices. And by the way, the number that you see is the link quality, and this is a number between 0 and 255. So definitely the higher number is better. And don't ask me why this guy is floating on its own and not being connected to anything. I think I just need to probably remove it and then pair it to the network again. That also means that your coordinator is definitely your most precious device on the network, and all your devices would know these coordinators specifically. So if your coordinator dies and you have to replace it, that means that nobody is going to be connected to the new coordinator. So you have to repair all your devices, which is going to be a pain, especially if you have a huge Zigbee network. So the other thing which I can talk about, or I should talk about, is for example, let's say, which one is this? I don't know. Let's take this knob. So if I can see what command it exposes, and there is also a functionality here that I can bind this device to, let's say, a lamp, which I don't have in my network at the moment, so this is not really going to be a good example. But this is how you would be able to link, for example, a switch to a lamp, or as a matter of fact, it can be a smart socket as well. So I don't know if you ever worked with the IKEA throat-free system, where you don't need a user interface like this. You just take your light switch, the battery operated light switch, and you can just link them to the lights. And this is exactly what you can do here. And the reason I would recommend you to spend time configuring this, because if you bind Zigbee devices together, then the coordinator will make sure that that message travels between your devices, meaning that as long as the coordinator is powered, your Zigbee network is working, and your coordinator would be able to, get the action or the data from your switch and send it directly to your lamp. So even if your server is powered down, well, not powered down, but let's say if your server is down, your Home Assistant or your Node-RED, nothing is working, but you have done the binding within the Zigbee network, your coordinator would be able to take care of that integration and the traffic between your Zigbee devices. There is a lot of other functionality here, but I think for the basics, that should be, good to start with. Also, you have an OTA here where you can see firmware updates for various devices, Zigbee devices, so you can just issue firmware updates from here. But I think for the most part, going through, just the devices, permit joining, and then occasionally checking the map whether the link qualities look healthy between the devices should be enough for you to get started. And of course, this all works with MQTT. So as long as you start pairing devices, you would see these messages appearing in your MQTT network. And in the configuration YAML, we configure the base topic. So everything is going to be under Zigbee.mqtt. There are going to be certain topics under bridge, so you can monitor whether the Zigbee MQTT service is working correctly. So this could be set, or you can use these messages to set them in some sort of alerts. So if you are not getting the state online, or if you are not getting info messages from time to time, then probably there is an issue with the Zigbee2mqtt network itself. But once your devices start talking, then they would start, sending messages under their device friendly name. So you can see the plug here, and they always appear to have an availability subtopic, but on the main topic they send a JSON data format. So whatever you have seen on the device details, you are also getting in JSON. So there's always going to be one topic with JSON payload. You are not getting separate topic for, let's say, current energy link quality. But as you can see, this is what the plug sends. So if I look at what's available here, you can see that basically we are getting, one attribute for each what you see on the screen. And this is occupancy sensor. This is a what is it? This is also, I think this is my other Zigbee, Sonoff smart plug, not Sonoff, Blitz-off. And the third one here, or fifth, is a temperature and humidity sensor. So you can see there is a battery percentage, there is a humidity, and there is a temperature. And we are also getting link quality, and some also send a voltage value in this is probably millivolts something, so 2.9 volts most probably, but you can just get the battery value, so that would be 62.5%. So again, you can read these values and set up an automation or a rule or a flow in Node-RED to say that if that battery is less than 10, then maybe send a notification for you to change the battery in your device. So this is what I wanted to cover in a nutshell about the Zigbee2mqtt network, especially how you set up, and a couple of tricks and tips. And I think I will be covering, specific scenarios in future videos. I'm also planning to do like an overall management of the Zigbee network, set up notifications, like low battery notifications, and do it sort of generically that it works for every single device. Maybe I'm also going to use InfluxDB to log some of the data into InfluxDB, so you can review certain changes or how the link quality changes, maybe something like that. The link to this documentation that I talked about is going to be in the video description. But that will be all for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.